starting. Apologies for that, but welcome to today's meeting of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. Those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. Before we begin, I can please remind everyone to only turn their microphones on when you wish or are invited to speak. I have received apologies from Mr. Merry. I'm going to move on to item 1, minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of September 24. I'll take them as read and agreed. Thank you. Question time. I've received a number of questions from residents in Stony Stanton in relation to local body matters. So good afternoon and welcome to you. The questions and my responses have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of this meeting and will be taken as read. These have also been published on the Council's website for public information. I remind members that there is to be no discussion on these questions. We have been advised that only one person, but that's wrong. I've got a few more people now, have asked to ask supplementary questions. So I'm going to start in order with supplementary questions. Miss Anne Jackson, would you like to come forward, please?
My question was about an unidentified water source. And I know that, you did a Section 19 report, but this water source was not identified in the Section 19 report. And obviously it was there at the time, we just didn't know about it. You said in your response that no resources can be put to it unless it's identified. So no resources will be allocated to it, and unless it's identified, no one will be held responsible for it. So my question is, when will this be investigated? Because it's important.
If I could just say, we haven't picked up enough detail from you. So if it's all right, if you're able to either discuss with us, because there is a drop-in session afterwards, to give us some detail on that. I mean, obviously, when we do the Section 19 report, at that point in time, we will take into account all the factors we can in the area that are known about, and we'll have a look and see what else needs to be taken into account. If there's stuff that's come to light after that you're aware of, yes, we need to know about that. But if you could provide details, sorry, I just don't have enough from what you've said there. If it's all right, perhaps we could pick it up either after the drop-in, or if you're able to send it in to us, we will certainly have a look at that.
And I'll call Emily Copping. I hope I've pronounced that right, is it? Yeah, thank you. Come forward, please.
Thank you. I was asking a question about a drain at the running into the Foxbank industrial estate. Now, I understand that after 5 years of working with landowners, I cannot see that we're any further forward in terms of the damaged pipe, and it is damaged rather than blocked. I know that my question was slightly edited. So this pipe that is damaged significantly impacted the 2019 flood. We've got no progress to report on that drain, and effectively you're leaving residents to reflood by not addressing it. So despite all this work with landowners, we're no further forward. And I'm kind of asking now for a date when this repair will be completed, and we can resolve at least one issue on our list.
Anne, anything to add to that? Victoria?
Yep. So the pipe is privately owned by Stressline, and we have been in frequent and regular engagement with Stressline. They did begin to make alterations to that, so we've been following the policy that we've stipulated in the response, whereby we engage and we follow all those certain the rules which you set out within that. And they have, I'm not aware of any further action taken recently. We have tried to make frequent contact with them. So the first thing to note is that if flooding does occur internally and it can be pinpointed to be as a result of this obstruction, then they are potentially liable for that flooding. And we have made them aware of that. They are, like I say, they haven't engaged with us recently. So we are looking at what steps we might take as per the policy. So we haven't, the process hasn't ended, is essentially what we're saying. We don't have a date for when they're going to remove that blockage, but we will keep pushing for that. We try to go with the engagement approach first, which they have been engaged to date. But obviously the next steps for that, we're having discussions internally about how that could be taken.
I'm just going to say 5 years. 5 years. 5 years.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your written response to my question, which I received this morning. Firstly, a point of clarification. In your written response, you state there is no legal requirement. If I may, this is not what I asked. My question is concise. Has the County Council inquired as to how we're finished in this position with respect to the flood risk to Godfrey Close and the downstream flood risk? That is my question. I'm not challenging that there's a legal requirement, but may I have from the committee an answer to my question, please?
Mr. Stones, thank you. Victoria?
The response is essentially that the decision to grant that application sat with the local planning authority, and at the time, I don't know the exact information that was available, but I don't know whether it was taken into account, but we can't go back in time. But the only thing to give you some form of assurance is that we are taking on board what you've said, and the technical expert that's leading on the flood alleviation scheme and the flood modelling is looking at that, but we can't go back in time with regards to the planning application, and that is a question for the LPA.
Thank you. Mr. Stones?
Yes, thank you.
Briefly.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Tor. Yes, I am aware of that. But the answer to my question is straightforward. Has the County Council reviewed this planning application, for which the question is either yes, we have, or no, we have not?
Victoria?
With regards to whether or not it was statutory consultee at the time, is that the question?
No, what I'm asking here, Tor, is has the County Council, given the problems that we all accept with Godfrey Close, has the County Council inquired as to how we've got to this position?
come in, Chair, as lead local flood authority and in leading the being responsible for the Section 19 report, our role is to look in and investigate the causes and therefore potential options to hopefully alleviate the problem in future, to see what can be done, not to go back over history and very many factors that will come into the problem. What we need to do is identify what's causing it at this point in time and what can be done to alleviate that. So as to going back and looking at previous planning applications a number of years ago, that would not be our role. We're focusing on the issues at hand now and what can be done to address those, and who then is responsible to take action for that.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much, Mr. Stones. Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Stones, you've had 2 supplementary questions already. So. Okay, thank you. Now, well, I've got Mrs. Peggy Hardy, but she's in hospital, I believe, and somebody else was going to ask a question. Mr. Jackson?
She told the hospital nurse that she wanted to be here. So she just asked me to ask it, but she didn't actually tell me what she wanted me to ask. I'm trying to find her. Oh yeah, she's talking about in the Section 19 report, it says that there were inaccurate records held at the time in relation to the capacity and connectivity and condition of multiple drains. And her question was, do these inadequate records invalidate the modelling that was conducted? Because it's, and also in relation to the Bellwave development, because if you're working with wrong information, garbage in, garbage out, you know, so do these invalidate it? I can't see how. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Victoria?
You're quite right. We need detailed information, accurate information to get a valid way in which we can mimic what happens now. So when we did the formal investigation, we didn't have that information. So we engaged extensively with the Flood Action Group at the time and the Parish Council, and we took a snapshot in time as to what we believed was happening. And from that, we realised that there was a very complicated drainage system mechanisms, and that's why we asked for money from the Environment Agency to do detailed drainage investigation, and that was done after we'd done the formal investigation. So the technical expert mapped out all the inaccuracies and all the concerns, and that was all resurveyed at the request of the technical expert, and then he has subsequently factored all that in and put that into the new flood model. So the flood model, which has designed the scheme, factors in the new detailed drainage investigation work. So the stuff in the Section 19 is almost superseded with regards to that. It was just a snapshot in time and identified further action to do this flood modelling study.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. You've had your supplementary question.
All right, I was just going to ask if we could have a copy of that, because we've got the Section 19 report, but we haven't got the additional information.
Yeah, we have, I believe we have shared that previously with the Parish Council, but of course, yeah, well, we can arrange for it to be shared, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get it to the Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Elizabeth Perry, please. Yeah, you just press that button, Miss Perry, and you have.
Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My question, well, first of all, I'd just like to clarify that my original question submitted doesn't mention the development west of Stony Stanton. My question was regarding not only the volume of water coming from Boundary Farm, but also the amount of silt as well. So as riparian owners, LCC have a duty not to allow us to flood or to block our existing drains with silt. So I want to ask, what action are LCC going to take about this?
Okay, and that is your supplementary. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see if we can get you an answer. Correct.
If it's all right, Chair, if we could call on our colleague, Mr. Winnington, because it comes under a property remit as LCC.
Sure, happy to do that.
Yeah, in terms of the culverts on the County Council's land at Boundary Farm, the only one for which was within our ownership is the one under the gateway from the access from, I think, Fisher Close. It is accepted that at the present time does have a small amount of silt in it, which is washed down from the land there. It also, on occasions, contains debris which has been deposited over the hedge into the ditch by other householders within the estate. So it's not just silt, it's sometimes garden waste as well that comes down there. The ditch beyond the gateway, as I understand it, has been regularly cleaned by our tenant over the years and is connected to a drainage head wall, which then leads into the culvert which passes through the back of the various houses and out into the back of a ditch or another drain at the back of Mount Sorrel cottages. Clearly, once the water gets to the head wall, which is on our boundary line, it becomes the next riparian owner's responsibility. Obviously, silt does wash down from farmland. The other ditches on the farm are regularly maintained, but they don't actually connect into that point, into that culvert. They are diverted round into the neighbouring owner's land and then onwards towards Station Road. So in terms of action, we will obviously monitor the situation ongoing and at appropriate times request or instruct the tenant that he should be taking further action to clear the ditch.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer. Thank you very much. And now call Mr. Brett Jackson, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure that my supplementary hasn't already been answered by John Stone. The question I concede was poorly written because I've asked about action taken against developers. I really should have said with developers because following the planning permission being granted and all the conditions of planning permission we assume being adhered to, there were a number of problems that resulted from the conditions, like the lagoons next to the estate don't actually fill up. The rest of the land does, but the lagoons don't. So that doesn't work. There were curbstones that were raised, which stops water going into that floodplain, and also a historic culvert that was pipe that ran down our shared access that ran into that field, and that was capped. So I can't believe that any of those things were part of comprehensive planning permission scheme. So I was asking, actually, and I ask again, what would the council or whatever body is responsible would do with the developer to actually alleviate the problems that they have created? And I know this is historic, and I know it goes back to planning permission and that the faults can be, but we haven't ever really addressed problems that have exacerbated flooding and not. I think part of the planning is to say that whatever chance there is of exacerbating flooding or increasing the chances of flooding are taken out in the original planning. That's not happened. So I'm asking who's responsible? If it's not Bellway, then who is responsible?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for that supplementary. I'm not sure whether that's a district or borough planning issue, but Victoria, if you're able to answer that.
I was just going to say that I have re-raised it again with the technical expert that's doing the flood modelling study, and he's asked me to say that he is taking into account that particular pipe we talked about, and that has been looked at. And there are also with regards to the ponds that you made reference to, we are looking at how we can utilise and enhance them as part of the flood scheme as well. But and I reiterated this in my correspondence with Chris earlier, John, that we won't be taking action. We can't take action against the local planning authority's decision, but we are trying to almost take on board what's happened and try and see how we can move forward to improve the situation.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much, Mr. Luke. Okay, that concludes this item. I'm going to move on to item 3, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7. I've received a question from Mr. Hunt. The question and my response has been published on the council's website and circulated to members of the committee and will be taken as read. I understand a supplementary question has been received from Mr. Hunt and that he has asked Mrs. Ack to ask on his behalf. Mrs. Ack.
Thank you, Chair. Since the figures show a stark difference between the most rural areas, 95% with access to a private car, and those in urban areas with just 36% with no car, would it be more efficient to put our limited resources into driving up patronage in urban areas without access to a car by working towards lower fares, evening and weekend services, more reliable timetables, a comfortable ride, and the protection of weatherproof bus shelter, and in doing so address some of our most deprived areas?
See if Anne can answer that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll have a go. I mean, as Mr. Hunt's aware, as the committee will be aware, our rural areas have a far more limited bus service than our market towns and more urban areas of the county. And in most cases, those are more frequent services in urban areas are commercially provided there. So, our residents in urban areas have better access to, or better opportunities to access health, education, employment type services, etc. And obviously as well, just by the nature of the communities, they've also got, better opportunity, or probably it's more realistic to think about walking and cycling for those. Whilst that is the case, and it's the reality of the bus network we have at the moment within the county, again, because we've brought it to this committee before, we've got a bus service improvement plan, and in implementing that, we've got an enhanced partnership which involves all our operators, etc. It very much is focusing on exploring opportunities of the type that Mr. Hunt has mentioned there to implement more of those, and particularly in the urban areas, to stabilise those commercial services, because it's in our interest to make sure those continue as long as possible, because if they're not, there's a gap and it's a funding burden, etc. So we're very much looking through that enhanced partnership to put in that type of measure to increase the attractiveness, etc., of those services for those residents, and particularly for those deprived areas and those urban areas. So I think in essence what we're saying is we absolutely agree the bus service improvement plan is aimed at that, and we're working at that through our enhanced partnership.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Mr. Hunter, and thank you, Mrs. Froskin's question. Thank you. Moving on then to item 4, urgent items. I've not been notified of any urgent items. Item 5 is declaration of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Does any member have any interest that they wish to declare? No? Thank you. Presentations of petitions under Standing Order 35. There have been no petitions. I change the order of business. Sorry. Oh, I've missed that. I've missed that one. I should know that one, shouldn't I? Declaration of the party whip. Are there any declarations of the party whip? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Change to the order of business. I propose to change the order of the items from that set out on the agenda and take the flood risk management strategy report first. I'm going to take this as being agreed. Thank you. So local flood risk management strategy, and Carruthers will present this item supported by Bill Barber from the flood risk management team. Anne, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just checking that my colleagues can show the slides then, if that's all right for the meeting. I'll kick off and start if that's all right. We just getting those up if it's okay. Thanks very much. Okay, this is an update on our local flood risk management strategy for you. You'll probably recall that it was approved in December last year by Cabinet, and we had brought, iterations of that before to this committee. It was published in February. We had a bit of a delay because we were quite busy with Storm Babette, then going into Storm Henk, unfortunately, so we had a lot on our plate, but it was published then. You'll see then we have a reminder of, check the slide, that's the one there, just a reminder there of the main principles and objectives we're working to under that strategy, and we have a number of actions that sit below that. We're bringing you an interim update today. We thought it'd be useful. There's been an awful lot going on in the flood scene. If you've just heard from some of the questions that we've had there's loads of activity across the county. We do aim to bring to you in future a regular annual update, and we'll discuss through the presentation maybe how you as the Scrutiny Committee might want to deal with that. We move on to the next slide if that's all right. Just a reminder, our role as the lead local flood authority, we coordinate the flood risk management authorities. They are the water companies, so the utilities there, and the Environment Agency, the internal drainage boards, anybody really with an interest in water and responsibility and, their activity in dealing with that. So we coordinate that, and that board oversees the implementation of this strategy. Now, the committee's role in that is a scrutiny role, obviously. So, hence again, bringing this to you today as the start of that process. So, we're really, seeking, and we will bring future reports on it about monitoring performance and the activities that are being undertaken. You know yourself just from your local areas how important it is to those communities affected, and to make sure we're supporting and doing what we can within our limited powers, I will say, as a lead local flood authority in coordinating that, and hence this committee's role in scrutinising that activity. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague Will Barber, if that's all right, to get into some of the detail about what we're doing in a whole host of different strands of work that's going on under flooding at the moment. Will.
Thanks, Anne. So what we're going to do is run through each of the 5 objectives, which you saw in that wheel on the first slide, with a particular focus on flood preparedness, response and recovery, given what's happened in 2024 with all the flooding that we've had. So firstly, Storm Henk occurred.
Very well. Can I remind colleagues to turn the phones off if they're in this meeting?
Just glad it wasn't me. Storm Henk resulted in 453 residential and commercial properties being reported as being internally flooded in Leicestershire, and 128 reported as externally impacted. We're still getting further properties reporting their flooding, so these figures may be higher, and not everyone reports their flooding, so that particularly that external figure may in reality be much higher. Storm Henk followed Storm Babbitt, which occurred in October 2023, where 48 residential and commercial properties were reported as being internally flooded. The worst affected areas in Leicestershire were Charnwood, Blaby, Melton and North West across these two events, and our sympathies continue to go out to those affected by flooding. Next slide, please. So as a result of these two events, the government enacted the National Flood Recovery Framework. So the County Council worked with the district councils to collate data for submission to government and enable Leicestershire to qualify for this framework of grants. So affected residents were therefore able to claim £500 to assist with their recovery, and a grant of up to £5,000 to help become more resilient to flooding by helping to pay for a range of property improvements. And also they could apply for 100% council tax relief for a minimum of 3 months. There were also grants and council tax relief available for the affected businesses. So I'll go on to the next slide, please. A bit more about the £5,000 grants, which the County Council are administering. So the council opened applications for the PFR repair grants for Storm Babbitt and Storm Henk in April of this year. And this is the first time that the council has administered this scheme. As of 21st of October, we'd had 121 applications. I think that's gone up by a few since then. Surveys and installations are currently arranged by property owners with support and approvals from the council. DEFRA pays grant funds per property to the council only once the measures are installed. The council is therefore not paying out grants in advance to property owners due to the financial risk. The current process therefore requires property owners to pay surveyors and contractors in advance of receiving the grant. And officers are therefore actively engaging with DEFRA to seek a rule change so that grants would be paid to the council in advance, enabling the council to better support the applicants. And we meet with DEFRA monthly and continue to push for that with other authorities. In most cases, £5,000 is not enough to fully protect properties. Some property owners have therefore contributed towards the cost or opted for recoverability measures, such as replacing carpets with tiles. There is also the potential for unclaimed grants to be pooled towards community level measures, and we're looking at that as potential in a few locations. The administration of the grant has required significant revenue resources from the council, as the DEFRA scheme does not cover the administrative costs of providing the scheme. So council officers, we're actively recording our costs and making DEFRA aware of the administrative burden. Next slide, please. Next, on to the spring 2024 drop-in sessions. So following Storm Henk, we had 5 multi-agency drop-in sessions in the places most affected by Storm Henk. The key risk management authorities were ourselves as the lead local flood authority, Severn Trent Water, the Environment Agency and district councils. Attendees really appreciated the face-to-face discussions with risk management authorities. Some stayed for up to 2 hours, and the council during these meetings received requests for updated local watercourse management guidance and for simple advice on who to contact during a flood event. So if we can have the next slide, please. We have, in light of this, produced who to contact leaflets, and that's been in collaboration with partners. These have been shared by email with flood wardens and members, and were also just distributed at recent engagement events. Next slide, please. On to formal flood investigations. So where flooding meets the locally agreed threshold, the lead local flood authority, so that's ourselves, has a duty to carry out an investigation in partnership with other risk management authorities. So the lead local flood authority is currently establishing still how many formal investigations have been triggered by Storm Henk. This could be a lengthy process as the data is analysed and compared against the council's formal flood investigation policy. These investigations involve various agencies, can be very complex, and will take some time to complete. But we are making good progress in our investigations. The LLFA does not have powers to make other RMAs implement solutions where it is their responsibility. In some instances, there may not be a realistic or affordable solution for flood prevention. Following Storm Henk, we think 18 communities may have triggered our threshold, and there's potentially more as further properties come forward as internally affected by flooding. Prior to Storm Henk, there were also 3 outstanding formal investigations. So this is a significant workload for the lead local flood authority team. The council has allocated £400,000 worth of additional resource to assist with formal investigations and other related tasks, such as the grant administration. All instances of flooding are investigated, regardless of whether a formal investigation occurs. Next slide, please. So remaining on sort of flood preparedness now, a series of flood exercises have taken place throughout 2024, coordinated by the Local Resilience Forum. So these have involved practicing tactical command group and strategic command group scenarios in response to hypothetical flood events. And these events were really well attended, and the lead local flood authority officers attended, as we often assist with these response groups. Next slide, please. Flood wardens and flood action groups. So really pleased to report the number of flood wardens has increased by 30 since September 2023. So that's really positive news. And we've had 3 training events in 2024 for all flood wardens. And then there are also annual flood engagement events for flood wardens. The last of these was hosted in September. And these were really well attended, as you can see by the picture there. Next slide, please. So remaining on flood wardens, there's also been a new flood warden working group established between agencies to help develop flood warden projects. And LLR Prepared has reviewed and updated the flood warden handbook, which provides information and guidance to flood wardens. LLR Prepared is also working with flood wardens to help them establish online networking groups so they can share lessons learned between each other. And there is also being a road closure proposal being developed, which would potentially allow flood wardens to close roads. This has been quite successful in other parts of the Midlands, so we're looking to, I suppose, take the lessons learned there and apply it elsewhere. But in terms of one of the principles of the strategy is working with communities, and I think this is going well with the flood warden work here. On to the next slide, please. So in terms of flood preparedness, there is also a new flooding subgroup of the Local Resilience Forum. This meets quarterly and is chaired by the Environment Agency. So this group will look at all things kind of flood preparedness, response and recovery between agencies. Then the multi-agency flood plan is currently being reviewed, and that will incorporate the lessons learnt from Storm Babbitt and Storm Henk. And The Environment Agency has also introduced some new flood warning areas in Barkby Brook at Syston, and also Sarby Brook at Sarby, and the Rearsbury Brook at Rearsbury. Next slide, please. So on to Be Flood Ready. So obviously with the changing climate, we seem to be getting more intense rainfall events, or bigger river flooding events as well. We really see there is a need for communities to be resilient to flooding and to be flood ready, essentially. So that's why we've developed the Be Flood Ready messaging here. And the council's website material is being updated with a focus on communities being flood ready. And there will be also further development of guidance notes, and these will be circulated and promoted in due course. Next slide, please. So further extensive flooding, as I'm sure you're all aware, occurred in September and October of this year. In September, 96 commercial and residential properties were internally impacted. The worst affected being Market Harborough on the eve of 21st of September, with 44 properties flooding, mainly businesses in the town centre, but also a few residential properties. Then as well in Blaby District, on the 26th of September in the evening, we've had 48 internal flooded properties reported. Obviously our sympathies again go out to those affected by this flooding. And in October as well, we had 4 residential properties internally impacted across Sarby and Wymondham. The council is not expecting there to be any national flood recovery funding for these, as the impacts nationally from these events were lower than Storm Henk and Storm Babbitt. That does lead to challenges with regards to kind of our messaging and comms to communities, as they've seen other locations flooded receive this grant support. So it can be a difficult message to convey. And we do make that clear to DEFRA as well. So this flooding may result in an additional 5 formal flood investigations. To help support these communities, we've held further drop-in sessions, so that in Market Harborough a few weeks ago, so that was really well attended. About 50 members of the community came along, and really helpful session. And then there was one at County Hall today, so to encourage members and those at this meeting to drop in and have a chat with the agencies present. Next slide, please. So as I say, we're mainly focused on the sort of flood preparedness, response, recovery elements of the strategy, but we've got one slide on the other 4 objectives for you. So firstly, on assets, watercourses and catchments. So this is the effective management of flood risk assets, watercourses and catchments. Flooding in 2024 has raised the profile of management of existing assets. There's been a high demand in our highways team for additional gully cleansing and maintenance, in addition to the routine cleansing which they undertake. And this has resulted in a backlog of work and stretched resources. The new watercourses management guidance has been developed, so there's a picture on the right from that. And it is consistent with the new national guidance from the government. The County Council's ordinary watercourse regulation and culvert policy, which was adopted as part of the strategy update, is working well. And natural flood management is being delivered through projects and countryside stewardship. Finally, a new asset map of the Environment Agency maintained or regulated assets is available publicly, online or on the Environment Agency's website. Next slide, please. On to the third objective that we'll cover, so encouraging sustainable development. We continue to fulfil the role of statutory consultee on surface water for all major planning applications. Most of the district councils as well have recently been working on updating their local plans, as I'm sure you're all aware. The LLFA and other risk management authorities have therefore also been consulted on multiple local policy updates or the strategic flood risk assessments that support these. So this has been an additional significant workload for us, which will continue into next year. We've supported the local highway design guide update in relation to the drainage and flooding. And prior to the general election in July 2024, we were expecting a consultation on enactment of Schedule 3 of the Flood and Water Management Act. This would have led to us becoming a SUDS approval body, which would essentially lead to the council having additional responsibilities in relation to SUDS approvals and adoptions on new developments. And we're just awaiting further update from the new government on this. Next slide, please.
I'll just hold you there a minute, Will.
Yeah.
Colleagues, have you gone through this at all? Yeah, okay. Okay, well, to say, very good. I know members have gone through this. Is there anything you can you sort of summarise rather than read the sheet?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So local projects. This is the fourth objective we'll cover. So we have a programme of projects. There has been some slippage in that programme due to the amount of flood recovery and investigation work. The Breedon flood alleviation scheme is a good case study of a scheme that's progressed well. There's a combination of measures being used there to reduce flood risk to 46 properties, and business cases have been approved by the Environment Agency for projects in Longwatton and Dyesworth recently. On to the last objective. Next slide, please. Yeah. We work in partnership to better understand flood risk. So the local flood risk management strategy has a assessment of local flood risk within that, and then we also look at studies in different areas. We're currently looking at developing bids for Loughborough and Oadby in this respect. And we've also been consulted on updates to the National Flood Risk Assessment and National Mapping. And these will be published by the Environment Agency in January. I think I'll pass back to Anne now. Thank you.
I'll just summarise and
Thank
conclude,
you.
if that's all right. Just one more minute, if that's
Okay,
all right,
that's fine.
for your patience. So basically, just to round up there, just coming back to that point I made at the beginning around this committee's role in scrutiny, we're aware that colleagues in Lincolnshire, for their equivalent committee, they ask and invite in on a regular basis the risk management authorities. So there's a proposal or suggestion that this committee might want to do that, say in an annual basis, so something for you to consider, and no doubt you'll let us know in the discussion where you think that's something you'd want to do. And just on the last slide there, just to summarise, we'll continue with the activities that Will has outlined for you there, and we'll bring you an annual update. We're keen to hear your views on what's happening and any other thoughts and comments you have, because you get it at the coalface, and obviously as well your thoughts on whether you'd like to see the risk management authorities come in, say, annually to have a conversation from their perspective. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much, Will. Colleagues, any comments, questions? Brian?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much for the report. Very comprehensive and detailed. And I think thanks to the flood team, and for me, Victoria in particular, for the work they've been doing over recent flood events. And I did like to see in the report that you were going away from responding to a flood that has happened and dealing with that to actually taking preemptive action. And for me, I think that's going to be the way forwards. I think in the news today, world temperatures have gone up by 1.5 degrees, first time in our history. And so I think doing the property flood resilience, the flood exercises, and the local help and enforcement is critical going forwards. I think it's going to be a shift in our work, really, instead of dealing with the flood, about flood prevention and working with local communities. And it's about how we can put more focus into that, and whether the flood team are, there is some in the report about that, but are the flood team more focused on preparing communities in advance of flood events happening, and then when a flood event happens, how the local community can step in and help as well, instead of it all coming to County Hall. Because I know that parish councils, borough councils, and as county council in our local area, we can do things, and it's about that preparedness. And then just finally, just on one of the slides, there's I introduced a new word called riparian ownership to lots of people in my division. They've never heard of it before. But on one of the slides, it got the ownership halfway across the ditch. I've always said that whoever owns the property owns the hedge and all of the ditch. If I'm not careful, I'll pull in county council on lots of the roadside ditches, because you will end up being half the owner of the ditch. At the moment, I'm putting all of the responsibility onto the landowner or the property owner that's got the riparian owner of the culvert or the ditch. So it's just one of the slides that had it halfway down the ditch. But it was just to, how can we focus more on preparedness, Chairman, and also that clarification on riparian ownership. Thank you.
Okay, over to Anna or Will. Can you answer that?
If it's all right, I'll start and then I'll hand over for the more detailed thing, if that's all right. Absolutely agree. I think a message, and it is all about be flood ready. Firstly, we as a county council, we're not a response agency. We're not an emergency response. And actually, just because exactly what you're saying, temperature changes, the frequency of flooding, the fact that we're seeing flooding happening in areas that never historically seen flooding, we have to get people change the mindset. People need to understand it could happen to them, but that old mindset of actually, if there's flooding happens, and yes, it's absolutely devastating for the people affected, but somebody will come along and fix it and make sure it never happens again. We're just not in that day and age. That is not going to happen. And, we have to change the mindset. People have to, and communities have to be prepared for it, more prepared what happens if and when it does happen to their area. So absolutely with you on that principle about how we approach it. And it is working with communities to build up that level of resilience. Absolutely. I'm going to hand over the more detailed stuff to colleagues if it's all right for your ditch point.
Yep. So just going back to the flood preparedness. So one of the slides was around the flood wardens. So there's been a lot of work on that, trying to push out that message and promote and get more on board. So if anyone in your community is interested in being involved in that, that is the key to us getting the messages out there, but also community response plans. So a lot of these affected communities have specific flooding response plans. So happy to engage and talk about any of those, because there's no point, if the flooding's happening, it comes fast, we can't predict it, and so we need to empower those communities to have be ready in their communities, rather than waiting for us. We may be, well, we're only responsive really from the highways perspective, so our predominant aim is to sort of protect the highway network, but if we do often try and assist communities if we can, but they may be somewhere a different part of the county, so it's crucial that we get that resource in the community level. Going back to your ditch line question, we have scoped up some riparian guidance that we're going to put out for consultation, working building on the national guidance that's come out from the Environment Agency, making it a bit more bespoke to the local level, Leicestershire. But historically, it's the ditch centre line is what we understand. So, but you may know differently. So I think it's definitely one for us to have a conversation about. But yeah, thanks for picking that up.
Thank you, Chair, and probably should have declared an interest in the fact that I'm a Member of Parliament for a different part of Leicestershire, but I wanted to focus on Braunston and where I'm the County Councillor. I suppose Obviously, we've had a significant number of questions from individuals who've been affected by flooding in Stony Stanton. I think if every one of our communities were given that same kind of time, we would be here until probably midnight, maybe beyond. So I think there is this recognition that we've now got many communities impacted by flooding. I think what I'm still confused about, and we've had many conversations about why we don't qualify for a Section 19, and there's a query over it being, well, it's floodplain, but it hasn't flooded for 30 years, and we've had floods every 6 to 8 weeks since probably for the last 2.5 years in my patch. But it still doesn't qualify for a Section 19. We know we've got real issues because it's a city council that need to do some work that will resolve issues for county residents. But I think for me, at the moment, it's frustrating to know that my community doesn't qualify for a Section 19, even though it hasn't flooded for so long, and then it's just been flooded constantly. So that's the first thing. The second thing is groundwater risk management. We understand groundwater risk management is looked at by the Environment Agency all the time. What information do we get of flood events going to happen? Because I think at the moment, the rain comes and then it floods, but we know that the Environment Agency do some work on groundwater risk management. And finally, in some of our documentation, and it's something I've asked before, is we are supposed to have river strategies. The river biome has not been looked at since 2020, and the strategy is out of date. When are the strategies for our water courses going to be updated? I know it's not county's responsibility, but I suppose there is this question about what responsibility do we have to ask that. I think it's the Environment Agency that are responsible for coordinating that, but what responsibility do we have to say, come on, these strategies for rivers and that are flowing through Leicestershire really need to be updated? So there was sort of 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. That. Victoria?
Yeah, so I was just trying to write them all down so I don't forget. So the Braunston Section 19, so the first thing to say is that even though it doesn't officially qualify for a formal investigation, every flooding incident gets looked at and investigated. It's just defining it formally as per our criteria. So during Storm Henk, there was significant impact in Braunston. We have recognised that. The reason why it doesn't formally qualify as per the existing policy is because it's a known flooding source. So we know where the source of flooding is coming from through the engagement that's been going on for a long time between the water company and the city council, impacting properties within the county boundary. So hopefully that explains that region. But just to reassure you as well, there are many communities that were impacted during Storm Henk that will be formally recognised within the formal investigation for Storm Henk. So there will be a discussion, there will be identified actions within that stipulated. So it's essentially getting a very similar report at the end of it as those that trigger the formal investigation. Because actually the under Section 19, it sounds grand, a formal investigation, but all we are required to do is identify responsible bodies and publish the actions, of which we will be doing for Braunston anyway. The groundwater information, that's a very good question. We do engage regularly with the Environment Agency. We do take into account that information. Is there something specific that you wanted to know about the area in Braunston? Or?
It was just about how do we engage with the Environment Agency on groundwater information, because I understand they do look at prediction charts in terms of flood risk and where the groundwater position is, and then they look at the weather and then identify risk.
Yeah.
But it's just what information do county get dealing with the other side, which is not the emergency response, but the clean-up, essentially.
So there is limited groundwater information out there as well. Some other LFAs have done more detailed work looking into this. But with regards to preparing for particular weather and situations, we do, and it was on the screen, we had the meetings, the response group, our response group, and that's where we get presentation from the Met Office and the EA on existing river catchment positions and where the weather is predicting to go. And then the river strategy, I'm happy to catch up with you separately about that and speak to the EA.
Thank you, Victoria. Mr. Bill.
Pick up Amanda's point about groundwater. And this is an excellent report, and I do agree with what everybody has said. But there's a specific issue with groundwater, and that is that, particularly in the southwest of the county, its water is not that far below the surface at any time. You dig a hole, and as Severn Trent often do, and the hole fills up with water. Often fills up with water. It's not just in one vicinity, it happens all over the place. I don't know about Stony Stanton. I don't want to tread on Maggie's toes here, but having listened to the people here, I don't think there's a river Stony Stanton. It's groundwater, isn't it? I think that's the issue. And my concern is that with everybody promising massive housing and industrial development, the sort of problems that we've heard this afternoon are going to be exacerbated. I know I've said it before in other places, but it fills me with concern that proposals as being looked at by the districts and the government and everybody else will fill the whole of all the countryside between Earl Shilton and sorry, I'm not treading on your toes either, Richard. It will fill up the countryside between Earl Shilton and Stony Stanton, Burbage, Elmsthorpe. It'll all be under concrete. I mean, I don't want to be emotive about it, but it will fill up. And if we've got groundwater problems now, as we heard this afternoon, I can't see how the situation is going to improve if we lose all that farmland that we currently enjoy looking at anyway. And I think you know the argument. If we fill the countryside up with all the growth that we've been promised or urged to fulfil, the situations that we've heard this afternoon are only going to get worse. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. I don't know whether anybody can answer any of that, but I think it's more of a comment rather than a question, isn't it? Anne, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I was just going to say, and obviously, under the planning system, the any new development has to demonstrate that it's not creating any more runoff than there is from a greenfield site. That's then approved, and we did mention in the slides there about the Schedule 3 approval for the County Council as lead local flood authority become the approval body on that. At the moment, our duty is we are a statutory consultee as part of a planning application. That then gets consented in whatever form, and as long as the developer builds it in accordance with the planning consent, that's all seen as fine, etc. As becoming, if we became the approval body, we'd have responsibility to take on and manage that. There'd be another, I think, layer there of trying to prevent where, I think you're intimating we could get to, etc. So I think that's a brief way of trying to say the planning system in theory is meant to ensure that new development does not exacerbate this situation. I think that's as far as I would go.
Do you want me to come in from a groundwater perspective? So
if you've got anything to add, Victoria.
Yes. Just if they're looking, so when they design a planning site, they will look to manage that surface water effectively, and they may look to infiltrate it into the ground. But a majority of Leicestershire isn't suitable. They have to demonstrate that it isn't suitable by doing testing with the ground to see how it infiltrates. But if there is a known groundwater flooding area, then again, it's not suitable. And also they have to consider what aquifers and what water potent supplies there as well. So it all is looked at. And then if infiltration isn't suitable, which very often isn't, they have to follow what's called a treatment train. And then they have to look for the next suitable source of discharge, which may be a watercourse or a culvert, or potentially even a public sewer or something like that. So it is, groundwater is assessed at the planning stage.
Thank you, Victoria. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, just to pick up on Councillor Bill's point, I know the application he refers to, and hopefully the Secretary of State will make the right decision on that particular application, particularly thinking in Bosworth, the only authority in the country that might have a crematorium that can also offer burials at sea. But there we go. Question to Anne. This is an excellent report. Are we okay to share this with parish councils and potentially residents who have been affected by flooding? If so, could we have a copy of the slides to pass on, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Phillimore.
Thank you, Chair. I think the report opens up a bit of a Pandora's box. Some really good stuff, and I will, Anne and Tor and everybody else knows my views of the flood management team through Yvette, Isha, and particularly Henk. I couldn't wish for better support. Where I think we have challenges, and perhaps because we do have a member of Parliament in the room, sorry, Anne, can't resist it, Amanda, is it seems broadly, utterly perverse to me that we are a county authority. We blow, spend, commit £1 billion a year one way or another. And our officers are not trusted by DEFRA to actually say to a resident who has demonstrated they've been internally flooded, because the emergency first responders are usually the local district authorities, and they've got a record which is fed into the flood managers, that we then have a system that puts our residents and commercial business owners through more trauma on how to get a survey done in the first place to then work out what the damage is, what the flood mitigation looks like. I think that is utterly perverse. We're an authority that manages about £1 billion a year. Surely our officers can be trusted to commit a few pennies, in metaphoric terms, to support our residents who are paying taxes into the government, into this authority. So that rant's over. But one for you to take away, Amanda, if you would be. Thank you very much.
And just remind you, Mr. Phillimore, that Amanda's here as a county councillor, not as
I know. I think the opportunity, so I think there is and I am in conversation with Tor about it, is I think there is a real opportunity for parish councils who by the majority have a legally appointed proper officer to actually work on that local resilience and the ability to take independent action to protect property, in particular, and residents. I also find it bizarre, as has been repeatedly stated, is that the flood managers, the flood authority, are the coordinators and the assessors. They have no authority to do other than assess and say to whichever response management agency, which utility company, which whatever it is, oh, this is what we think you need to do. And then they have no authority. As far as I understand the system, those other agencies actually don't have to do anything, if I understood it correctly. And I'm looking for a nod or a shake of a head here. So our officers are going to enormous effort and time and investigation and assessment to present a report, the Section 19 in its formal state, to all these other agencies and providers who actually don't have to do anything, if I've understood it correct. Is that right, Tor?
Yeah.
Well, if you come through with me.
Yeah. Sorry.
Mr. Phillimore.
Okay.
Is that one's a rant and one's a comment and one's a question? Is that right? Victoria.
So, and you're quite right. There is no legal duty. We can't enforce risk management authorities to take action. So, and it's so we do rely on that relationship building. They do have to work with us as a partner agency under the Flood and Water Management Act, but we can't enforce on make them do something. And I think that's where we're struggling elsewhere across the county.
Thank you. So thank you, Anne, Victoria, and Will for the presentation. Ozzy, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we've had a really good debate. It's been explained very well, and I'd like to put on my record my thanks to Tor, the team, for the work they do. They're a small team, they're very busy, but they're very dedicated and professional.
Thank you, Ozzy. Mrs. Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to say, as I sit on the Trent Regional Coastal Committee, and I see it at the next level up as well, the frustrations. And I think going forward, there needs to be a really big shift from government downwards to all agencies and how we look at flooding going forward, because there's such a dramatic change. It's very frustrating as well that we're given the title of lead flood authority, but yet we have no actual powers or resources to enforce. And I think that was seen by the questions we've had today from residents. Also, but I do commend the work that the team are doing going forward on Be Flood Ready, because I think that's going to be a key, because I think people have really got to help themselves, because one of the biggest frustrations is with the business cases. They take so long, they're so complicated to get online to actually get the physical mitigations put forward. As you heard, 2019, we're 5 years on. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. We'll move on now. We've concluded that to item 8. So we're going back to the agenda, item 8, Network Management Highways Activity Review. It starts on page 9 of your agenda pack. Pat Clark, Assistant Director, and Andy Cryer, Highways and Transport Team Manager, will present this report. I understand there is a presentation on this item, so over to you, Pat.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to bring you this report today to discuss the activities that we have in the network management team. The purpose of the report is to provide you with information about the council's duty to coordinate works on the highway and the level of activity that takes place across the county council. Network management is one of our statutory functions that we undertake in the Highway and Transport Operations team. And I'm going to hand you over to Andy Cryer, the team manager for commercial and business support, who has the responsibility for network management. Andy.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you everyone for having us as per Pat's comments. Just before we go on to the first slide, if I could just highlight the report that's been referenced and encourage members to read the report, because what I'm going to talk about here is supporting the information that's in the report. So if we could just go on to the next slide. Oh, thank you very much. I'm not going to verbatim talk about the information on the slide. I'm going to talk around it, and I will make reference to it. So Leicestershire County Council's network management function operates effectively within the powers granted under the Traffic Management Act and the New Roads and Streetworks Act, and also within the limitations of our internal network management resource levels. Effective network management coordination provides more consistent, predictable and reliable journeys for the movement of people and goods. Leicestershire County Council operates a highways permit scheme, which enables the council to deliver a more effective network management service through the increased capability to control the planning and undertaking of any temporary work that takes place on the road network. In addition, we respond to unplanned events such as the gas outage in Ratby, March 24, providing reactive network management and temporary traffic management support. Just to highlight,
This is a growing industry and has been growing since its conception of permitting within local authorities. The demand for temporary space on our highways is increasing. Telecoms, fibre broadband, vehicle charging infrastructure, capital investment schemes with the already well-established utility companies are all putting demands on us, with people coming and knocking on our door and asking us to either maintain or incorporate new assets under our highway. The permit scheme is not exclusive to Leicestershire. Many local authorities have, in fact, most local authorities have taken on a permit scheme to support them with their network management function within the last 7 years. There is a requirement upon us to publicly publish a permit scheme evaluation report after the first year of our permit scheme, the second year, the third year, and then every 3 years after that. You can see within the bullet points down there, which provides some numbers, 1,971 days of road closures in the county over an annual period, 71,000 total days of work, temporary works going on, 5,120 live work sites inspections undertaken. So there's some big numbers. I'd like to point out the bit at the bottom. Housing developers and their temporary works on the highways are not covered under the same legislation as utility companies. Our powers are different. We have to support and facilitate them in their activities in with more onus on our own resources than we do with utility companies, as they are not undertaking either street works or road works. Generally, they are building and wanting access to places and that type of thing. Thank you. Next slide. So this is a little bit about permit applications. Within a permit scheme, utility companies who are often referred to as statutory undertakers are required to submit a permit application. Yeah, it can get confused with other sectors. Utility companies, for the common term, you know, so Severn Trents and National Grids. They are required to submit a permit application. You can see some figures up there, which represent the permit applications submitted per sector. Where you see the term water, our common organisation that we know in our area is Severn Trent, obviously, so you can make the association. What I'd like to highlight is the bottom line increase of 36% over the last 3 years to you. So that's the 9.2, 22-23, followed by the 36 in 23-24. Not all permit applications result in actual works on the highway. 23% of permit applications for work result in no actual work being undertaken. Can be for a number of reasons. Changing in priorities, changes of need. This poses a constant challenge to us as Leicestershire County Council in our coordination of works. We may decline other important works because we have had a permit application for works that then get cancelled. For the council to effectively carry out the coordination of works, including the advanced publicity of works, it is essential that permit applications are submitted with sufficient lead time based on the work category as set out within the New Roads and Streetworks Act. If you want to read a bit more about that, in the report, that's section 19, 20 and 21. There's a little bit more on that for you, rather than just repeat the information in there. In addition to utility works, the council network management function also manages applications for developers, which I've referenced before, and also events. So we'll all be familiar with Download as one of the primary big events in Leicestershire that has that high footfall, but also there's the small local events as well, you know, local fire station wanting to do an event if they're affecting the network as well. So we also field those. Works durations, how long is it going to be? Is it taking too long? Okay, so this is a little bit on works durations. The County Council accepts a proposed work duration by the utility company unless the County Council deems it to be too long. If deemed to be too long, we are in a position to challenge that application. If it is reasonable, an application, you've got to dig a hole, fix a pipe, fill the hole back in, and you're asking for 4 days or 3 days, we will grant it. If it is unreasonable, we will challenge it and potentially decline it. We also designate streets as traffic sensitive based on a criterion that is set out within the regulations to ensure that streets with specifically higher traffic flows have greater consideration within the coordination and control of works. These designations contain timings for when the flow of traffic is estimated to be at the defined levels for traffic sensitivity. The network management team challenges methods of working and, wherever possible, places conditions to undertake work outside of peak times. However, in some cases, this cannot be done due to the nature of the traffic restrictions and the need to maintain safety. Works that exceed their agreed duration can create significant coordination issues and negatively impact other works programmes. Promoters may request, by promoters I mean utility companies or the owners of the work, may request a work extension whilst the works are in progress, which can be granted or refused. So excavation, dig down, find an engineering problem, works are going to take longer. We will take an assessment of that. Again, if reasonable, that can be granted. If unreasonable, that can be rejected. Or if there are significant other implications. Last year, 2,157 works exceeded their planned duration. 14,720 extensions were granted. Variation to permits. Both regulations and permit scheme include a provision for the council to vary or revoke a permit. Therefore, a permit variation can be issued either by the promoter for the council to grant or refuse, or by the council to the promoter as an imposed change. The types of permit variations fall within different categories. Sections 30 of your report has a little bit more information on that. In most instances, the promoters submit a work duration extension request when it is apparent that the work will need to take longer than planned. For example, if the work is impacted by adverse weather conditions. The table shows the number of requests for work duration and the outcomes on the slide there. Next slide, please. Communications. The communications tools used by the network management function include One Network. I really hope everyone in the room is familiar with One Network. It's a public access web platform for the publication of temporary works and events affecting the highway. And this is to promote the visibility of works. We will manage the information for Leicestershire that go onto that. We have some statutory requirements for our communications. We will prepare public notices and press releases. We will request, if they're not doing it already, works promoters to erect site notices, undertake letter drops, undertake community and business engagement sessions for larger schemes, and we can impose conditions on the permits that ask works promoters to do such. Stakeholder engagement. So we will undertake an annual quarterly coordination meeting with utility companies, and as an authority we engage with HAWK, which is the Highway Authority and Utility Company Alliance, and that brings highway authorities, utility companies and government together with the aim of working safely and smartly, and that's to reduce the impact of street and roadworks on members of the public throughout the UK. Challenges, please. Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, our challenges. Resources. This is both linked to recruitment and retention of skilled staff and difficulties in attracting staff with the required knowledge and skills to undertake the range of specialist roles within network management, such as street works inspector and network coordinator. Growth. The continued increase in demand for temporary space on Leicestershire's highway network is putting pressure on the existing resources to have sufficient time and capacity to coordinate works effectively. Further challenges relating to this are ensuring that the council is applying robust traffic management conditions on each of its permits when they come in, prior to approval, and further to that, inspecting and enforcing that the conditions that we put on permits are actually being delivered on the ground with our inspections. Network management responds to unplanned events, as I've said before, such as rapid gas outage and extreme weather events. And this can put further pressure on resources as it's reactive. What's next? Next slide, please. Moving forward, we will continue to operate our highway permit scheme and plan to align our operational resources to address the challenges of growing demands for temporary works on the highway. Leicestershire County Council have commented on the white paper relating to lane rental schemes and is watching industry developments and DFT updates. And this is a little bit on lane rental schemes now. A lane rental scheme does not replace a permit scheme. It is an additional regime that provides a clear framework for a targeted approach to network management and reducing congestion from works. It does this by focusing on key strategic roads and with charges applied only at the busiest times. Schemes need to be approved by the Secretary of State for Transport before they can become operational. The main aim of a lane rental scheme is to reduce the impact of works on the busiest roads at the busiest times for road users. Charges should be targeted at encouraging those engaged in works to reduce congestion for example, by doing works at different times, at different works locations, jointly with other promoters. So you might have Severn Trent and Cadent Gas coming together. As a result, the DFT's policy position is that schemes should apply to an authority's own work in the same way as is the case with existing lane rental schemes. So any charges are levied also internally as well. This is consistent with the parity principle, which is well-established principle for this sector, and the Traffic Authority's network management duty to set out in the Traffic Management Act. Lane rental allows a highway authority to charge up to £2,500 per day for works on the busiest roads at the busiest times. It helps to minimise disruption, and charges apply to works promoted by both utility companies and highway authorities. That's everything. Thank you. Just to highlight the report again for you with the information in there, and I've supported that. Thank you for listening, and thank you for that. No.
That's great, Andy. Thank you very much for that. You are staying for the hard bit now, aren't you? Questions. So it's over to members for comment. Mr. Bill.
Really, the frustrating thing about driving is when you come across some temporary traffic lights and you go a quarter of a mile, whatever it might be, and you eventually get through, find that there's no work being carried out at all on the highway. It always seems to happen at weekends. Is this being addressed in any way to try to reduce the length of time that roads are closed off?
Thank you. The problem that you've highlighted is not local to Leicestershire. It is a national problem. There has been a change in the sector which has exacerbated this problem, which is, in years gone past, the industry structure was such that works gangs would be multi-skilled and include multidiscipline groups. So, for example, you would have a dig team, you would have technical experts, you would have a repair team, you would have a reinstatement team, and they would be in one. They used to travel around as trains. With the growth of the industry, these activities are now segregated and are their own operational groups. Really good example is you've got Severn Trent, you've then got their contractor, but then their contractor will have another contractor doing works for them. And so therefore this has been exacerbating this problem. We are aware of it. The solution, we believe, is making contributions to organisations like Hawke, representing ourselves, highlighting the need for change within this, and for it to be recognised by those groups to drive further controls within legislation. But we are challenged with it, and actually what you've highlighted there with the level of customer inquiries and complaints that particular challenge poses as well is that further draw on fielding those complaints on behalf of the public for us as an authority.
Thank you, Andy. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. Slightly on the last comment as well, and a 36% increase is a frightening figure. And I'm wondering in my own mind whether it's to do with more health and safety issues in the age we are now. But the questions I get as a county councillor, we're the font of all knowledge. So they say, Brian, why is the road closed? And there are examples I get all of the time is that there's no work on the highway, there's no work on the path, it's actually in the grass verge, but there's temporary traffic lights up. And I'm sure that's to do with health and safety. The question about why the road is being closed, and I know all the permits you issue, it's very hard to combine jobs, but why can't I get the question, why can't jobs be done at the same time? As long as a set of traffic lights goes up and a piece of work is being done, and then 2 days later, just 50 yards down the road, another set of temporary traffic lights goes up for another job. And these are the questions I get all of the time, and I can understand in our area why there is a 36% increase. And then also, it's also with the floods as well, about enforcement on closed roads. A lot of the roads in the Beaver Division are single track roads or very narrow roads, and they'll close the road off, but then people still use it. And I don't know how the enforcement of that actually goes into place. And somebody did suggest to me where there's a long piece of road closed and they've got no idea why it's closed, if there was some sort of signage to say electricity supply, water burst, or something like that, because they say, well, why is the road closed? I don't know. There's no information on there, and it's just for information, but maybe you can't answer that one. But from a county council perspective, 36% increase in permits is a worrying thing for me, because of the impact on staff and funding for that department. Can the current staff cope? Is it something we need to look at, put more resources into to cope with future demand? Thank you, Chairman.
Andy, are you able to come back on that?
Yes, I think I've got two. Frequent concurrent works first. Increase in demand. Yeah. So on the first one, I do actually speak with members of the public around this issue, and what I find an effective method of communication is to sort of give an example. And if you've got a water outage and it's immediate, and then a couple of days later you've got a gas outage, you've got two different giant organisations responding to those, and that might be in the same vicinity. Where I think the challenge becomes more within our control is planned works. And it's important to recognise the definition, which is highlighted in the report, between immediate works and planned works. Immediate works are urgent works. So that might be a burst water main where a resident hasn't got water or has got sewage coming up through their plug hole in their shower. And under legislation, that would be a reasonable risk of damage or injury, or maybe even risk to life in some instances, where there is a statutory requirement on the utility company to respond to that. We as a local authority do not have the powers to intervene in the utility company's statutory right to repair their asset in that set of circumstances. Immediate urgent works do not need to be notified to us prior to their start, because again, that can delay the start. So there is a requirement to notify us, but and the requirement is within 2 hours of the start of the work, which is fine. And we can take that and we will log it from an audit perspective, and we will quickly get it onto one network. But the hole is dug, and the traffic is there and the people are there. Again, you get concurrent immediate works within a similar area that can cause pressure. Also, if you have planned works on the ground and we've been effective in our coordination, yeah, this looks good. Not a lot going on else going on in the area. We're happy. Cadent Gas, you can come in. And then there's immediate works, but the planned works have already commenced. From a public perception, there is that, how can we let concurrent works happen like this? We're not perfect. Occasionally, we'll have planned works that are slightly close to one another, and that can cause us some comebacks as well. And we have to manage that. But also we have to recognise the pressures and the resources on this, like you said. On the resources, really interesting. You've seen the numbers. We've got 8 inspectors. 8 people. The whole of Leicestershire, all of those works. A public that makes the observations that we've made in this room, which are all absolutely valid from public perception, but we have 8 inspectors. So again, it's, if you are a utility company, you have a responsibility to manage your works, and there is a lead there from the utility companies when we have to expect them to do that in that way. Yeah, I don't know whether that covers what you were hoping to cover.
Sorry, just to add to what Andy said, there's a couple other points. So on the growth thing, there's a whole host of reasons why we're seeing that level of growth. Part of it is everybody like us with our highway network has got an ageing infrastructure, haven't they? So there's more and more things going wrong with them. And interestingly enough, when we've had things like burst water pipes, often a secondary fault can happen after the first fix. And we were talking to Severn Trent recently, and they said that's a really common issue. They go in and fix it once, and actually there's a weakness there, and it happens again a second time, etc. So they've all got aging assets. The other thing is we've got a massive development and growth agenda, haven't we, as a county, as the rest of the country has. So there's more and more demand for developer work. So that means a new roundabout tying into the existing road networks. They've got to dig it up, roadworks, etc., etc. All the utilities have to go into those developments. So gas, water have to get in there, etc. And just interestingly, again, that meeting, and Andy and I were meeting with Severn Trent recently, they informed us their capital programme is increasing by 5-fold next year. Now, not all their apparatus and their capital works will be on our highway network, but a good proportion of that is. So, it doesn't bode well for, the number of roadworks out there. Just a couple of things. Your question, why closed? And can we put signing up? Well, that would be for the works promoter to do. But I automatically go to, oh my goodness, one, enforcing that they do it, because we'll get complaints there isn't, and then they won't take their signs away and we'll get complaints about, could you go and take them away? But actually the easy thing is we need to get the message out there about One Network. If you haven't looked at it, look at it, one.network.org. Go in your area, zoom in, it's got little symbols, click on the symbol, it tells you when it's closed, who the works for. It doesn't give you loads of information, but it'll tell you if it's Severn Trent or if it's us or whoever, and the duration of it. Keep telling people about that. To me, that's the one we need to focus on. It's a national thing, so One Network's the way to go on that one. The last thing I'll say, concurrent works often, and I remember there was an ad on the TV years ago, and I think it was for a beer company, and it was about, couldn't we just have, the logical thing is they're all in there digging up the road at the same time, not one, then the next one, etc. But actually, and I think we looked at this, particularly ones in, I think it was Kirby Maxlow area, we looked at how we could try and do that with the developer and all the utility works. But there's something about the physical space, because this one needs to dig up that bit of work, that bit of road to get, into its pipe work and utility. That one needs to do something else. The developer needs to do the roundabout. And the actual physical space for them to do their works and have their kit in often doesn't work. So I guess, on paper, it seems absolutely logical. Get them all in the one, but the logistics of it doesn't actually work as well. What we do is we try and challenge down the duration. Any one person needs to be in there, or one organisation needs to be in there doing their works, and then coordinate. And we have a view on whether certain works can go on at the same time, i.e. the local road network can take it, or if they have to wait until, their turn whenever. Sorry, Chair.
No, thank you for that, Anne. Pat?
I'll just add on in what Anne and Andy have said, totally in agreement from my perspective in what they've said. Just one additional thing too, that we have driven health and safety. It's so important that we make sure that everybody is safe on the highway. And I do know that sometimes that does mean inconvenience, but what's inconvenient to one may be safety for somebody else. So, people pushing pushchairs are not subjected to going out in the road and expecting them to go around where roadworks and stuff like that. So we do have to drive up safety at the same stage. And the guys have done a great job at trying to push that fact as well with the utility companies. But it's a balance. It is a very, very fine balance. Okay.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for that, Andy. Mrs. Ack.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. One Network's brilliant. It solves half of my highways issues. Amanda, why is this closed? It's super easy and it's brill. I think the only question I've got is sometimes the date is open-ended. There's not always an end date on One Network. So quite often you go in and you have a pre-information that's comes through on here about something that's closed, and you quite often have an 18-month period that's sitting in One Network. So I don't know why that happens. Is there a foible? Is there a automatic date that gets added on? It was just that question on that. In terms of organising routine works, all through Braunston, we've had upgrades with telecoms, and Severn Trent have been doing some work. And actually what we've seen is, for some reason, both organisations have just wanted to do their works outside the school at the point at which the school goes back after a half term or after a holiday. And I don't know whether or not there is that acknowledgement that where it is close to a school, knowing how chugged up our roads get at open and close time of schools, do we bear that in mind when we approve a permit? Because I guess you get so many complaints going, why have they gone back today when all the kids are going back today and the road is closed? So I didn't know whether or not there's sort of anything that we do to make sure particular roads we try to avoid at certain points of the year. And I know we can't always do that, but there are 13 weeks the kids aren't at school. Maybe there is that conversation we could have. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Last one. It indicated on the slide that we have no responsibility when the developer closes the road. But I'm assuming we actually get called out all the time for it. So what's the impact? Even though we have no responsibility, i.e. we don't provide a permit for them to close the road to put their services in, what's the overall impact? Because I imagine residents are complaining when roads are closed. It's incredibly inconvenient because actually it's full road closures. It's not just a small work round. It's actually full road closures when developer piping goes in. So what's the impact to the department? Sorry, thank you.
Okay, Andy, Pat, Anne, over to you.
Okay, so you've got open-ended on one network, schools, and developer clarification. Okay, so I think if it's okay, I don't know what you guys are, if it's okay on the open-ended on one network, for me that's quite a technical question. I'd quite like to go away and have a look at that and come back if that's okay, because I could talk around it, but I think I'd quite like to understand it and just have a look and sort of come back with a response on that. The schools, the answer is a firm yes. We are aware, and effective network coordination utilises the annual calendar effectively. What do I mean by that? I mean that we will sometimes force works into the summer holidays. We will sometimes bring works out of the summer holidays, depending on the nature of those works. Really good example, Aussie, flood alleviation scheme Groovy. Great example, long scheme, long road closure, key route through the village of Groovy. Due to the duration is due to be longer than the summer holidays. A coordinator will look at it and go, what am I going to do? This is the diversion route is past the school. We've got to get the body of this work done in the summer holidays, and then we are going to have to accept that this diversion route past this particular school is going to continue because the road's going to be open and we don't have another option. So we have to accept that we do get that overlap. I think if you've seen short-term works outside schools, just as schools go back, if that was a case that kind of hit my desk as an example as a customer complaint, I want to have a really close look at that and understand, was it an emergency work? Was it emergency works? You know, had something happened and there was no choice? If it was planned, why is it planned? What have we done? How have we considered this within our coordination? But I suppose in response, my main response to that is you could speak to any one of our coordination team about schools and school holidays, and they will give you the response that I had. So it's kind of within the practice. Yeah. Developers, I think I need to clarify that because if that's the impression the presentation gave, I need to just put a clarification on that. So the process for a developer, if you are a developer and you want to close a road, what you will do is you will make initial contact with local authority. And we've got to remember that developers go through development control, and that goes through an S278 process and an approval process as well. Generally speaking, with that engagement as part of that process, that will highlight the need to close a road. We have a development control team within Leicestershire County Council. Our network management team will work closely with that team, and also will sometimes be directly contacted by developers who express their wish to close a road. The identification of that they need to close a road happens. Hypothetically, let's say we're happy with that. What they will not have to do is submit a permit application, but that doesn't help us because we want a permit application in our system. We want to be able to audit it. We want to be able to put it on one network. We need to fit it into our permit scheme process. So what do? We do the administration on behalf of the developer. So as it fits into our process, and we can document the delineation between developers and utility companies, but we will do it to allow them the statutory right to operate and take that piece of road for a period of time. The challenge with that is it absorbs our resource to do it. And not only that, if they do something wrong that we would ordinarily issue a financial penalty notice to a statutory undertaker for, we can't do that with them in the same way. And because of the regulations. And so therefore, we have to rely on our effective engagement to ensure that housing developers are dotting the I's and crossing the T's for health and safety, sticking to their durations, progressing their works programs and not maintaining too much space on our road network for too long. So I suppose the reason why I highlighted them in the presentation is that they fall into this slight other category from a legislation perspective. Have I articulated that okay? Is that okay for everyone?
Anything else? Les?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Andy. That made it clear, but demonstrating just how complicated it actually is. And I think, if I may, with your indulgence, Chair, just picking up on one of Andy's earlier comments about the new ways of working for the statutory undertakers. So I think this will resonate with you, Andy. So we actually had a power outage outside our house. And if memory serves me, I was desperately trying to get it. So we had one team come and find it, and another team brought a generator. Another team came and dug it. Another team came and technically assessed it. Then another team came and strapped it because it was 410 seconds, switch it. Then another team to repair it. Another team to fill it. Another team to make good, and another lot to come and fetch the Jenny. So I think that was 9 different agencies, workers, contractors, whatever it is, to deal with one power outage in a footway. Which leads me on to a question. So one of the, I think, the banes of life that we're all aware of is, and clearly they are increasing, is we wind up with checkerboard footways. So without being able to predict, because we have a redressing program over whatever period of time it is, do we, in that permit application, or is there an opportunity to effectively put a cost on those utility providers to contribute to our future redressing program? Because we do wind up with patchwork footways, Chair, and which I will leave the officers to respond to, if I may, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Phillimore. Anne, is that something you can answer, Andy?
Okay. There is a piece of legislative code of practice called the SROH, and that is the Standards of Reinstatements of the Highway. Our statutory undertakers or utility companies have a responsibility, if they dig up our highway, to reinstate that highway in accordance with the SROH. We have a set of powers to make an assessment of that reinstatement within a given time, and if it is not in accordance with the SROH, we can issue a financial penalty notice and we can instruct further reinstatement. A really good example of that is someone digs a trench, they dig out the spoil, they put it on the side, and rather than getting in fresh GSB to fill the trench, they put the spoil back in and they put tarmac on top, blacktop on top. What that will do is that will sink, but it's quick. It gets them in, it gets the job done, and they get out. Our inspector, if they didn't see that reinstatement, it will look absolutely fantastic on day one. It won't after a winter. So we have a period of time, and we have an inspection regime for reinstatements, and we will take action where we can. We are limited by our resources, and also there is, as with all codes of practice and legislation, there is an interpretation on quality of reinstatement, which can be very high quality, and there can be a view that's not so good quality, but it can also be compliant with the reinstatement method, which we see. We see a lot of the trenches from fibre companies within our things. Visually, it's not very appealing and it's a bit of a lump in the road, but actually, generally speaking, they're in accordance with what they're allowed to do. So from an environment perspective, there's that view, but also from a compliance perspective, you know, they're doing it, sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Just briefly, just to add what Andy said, but just to be absolutely clear, that's about reinstating the work they've done. We've got no ability to actually get any additional thing to the fact that the minute somebody's cut a trench in a highway or a carriageway, footway, etc., you've reduced the lifespan of that by a third. There's nothing that makes that up. The fact that we will have to go in and maintain that in advance of normal, you know, from what we've done, we've no ability to get anything towards that.
Thank you. Ozzy, wind up.
Very quickly, I can confirm what Andy said. I mean, the same alleviation works in Groovy. I crabbed it. The officer came out, he crabbed it, and basically the Severn Trent have got to reinstate Leicester Road. So, you know, we work as a team and we will not accept standards that are not up to our standards. So I commend the team for what they do.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Ozzy, for that. All done on this? Yeah. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks.
Yeah, did you all hear me? Asked to note the report, yeah, okay, thanks. Next item is the Members Highways Fund update, and Director of Environment and Transport will present this item. So over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair, and I shall be brief because you've had some meaty items today, haven't you? Okay, this report is just concluding on the Members Highway Fund, and just as a reminder, we saw £1.4 million allocated in each of 21-22 and 22-23, so the members in each of those years had £25,000 each to spend on highway improvements in their own areas. This was completely new initiative for the authority, so we're kind of running at pace to try and put in processes to allow you as members to spend that money in your areas, and obviously you as members to become familiar with what you couldn't do, etc. And I think to be fair to say, it's been a learning process on both sides, both from us in the delivery side and the teams, and you yourself as members and working with the community on that. Just a couple of little stats for you. We had 845 applications from our 55 members, so that averages of 15 per member, so quite a lot. Just under half of those were declined, however, for a number of reasons, either too expensive, member changed their mind, not allowable on the highway, or out of scope for the Members Highway Fund wasn't really to do with highways and transport, etc. But the factor on that, I would say, is an awful lot of those would have gone through process of assessing, costing, etc. So it still took resource, although ultimately they were withdrawn. So we delivered just over 450 schemes in total then for members, and the ones that were most popular were about speeding and safety. I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody around the table here. MVAS, you know, those mobile vehicle activated signs, probably came in top of the pops. Everybody loved those, as did things like gateway features, lining, restrictions, parking, pedestrian kind of crossing type things. They were really, really popular. As stated, this. One other thing I would say is some of the Members Highway Fund was allocated as grant, in effect passported to a third party, either a parish council or another third party, either to carry out works or towards an initiative, something like, say, purchase of a community vehicle. So there was that element as well. It wasn't all stuff that we as highways delivered on the ground. As stated, this was new to us all, so there were lessons learned in it, and paragraph 16 and 17 of the report covers those. I think from our lessons, and you know, hopefully this, well, I think it will resonate with you, in terms of the communication, there was an awful lot of learning there, and that's why in the kind of second half of the project, we brought in the online system so that in members, if they were familiar with that, and hopefully you were, you could apply, you could track, etc. We give you a bit of a menu to give you an idea of costings of various things and what might be involved, just to try and help that process. I appreciate we probably could have done an awful lot more, but that was one thing that came out for us. The other learning was we implemented some internal IT that really did share across a whole host of teams information in one place. What we were finding was this is probably the first initiative that really went across the breadth of the department, and we found early on that some of the communications wasn't working, so we implemented some IT and systems on that actually we've taken has been a legacy, a positive legacy coming out of this project that we're now applying to other initiatives in other work in the department that really has been beneficial. So that was one positive that certainly came out from the operational and the delivery side of this project. So I appreciate probably the biggest frustration I heard from members was the amount of time to deliver. I fundamentally think that was about 1, clarity of the scope of the project, 2, setting up the processes, 3, and we did cost this into the project additional resource. However, when it came to it, we couldn't recruit. So that resourcing fell to our existing teams who either had to fit it in with other work or put aside other work. So we were really challenged on the resourcing side of it. And I think the other thing was we really did not forecast the level of work and level of applications we would get in. And I'm sure from the members' point of view, you didn't appreciate maybe what was involved in delivering some of these things, you know, bit of lining down there, few wee lines. Why do you have to do a consultation? Why do you need a traffic regulation order that takes, you know, months to put in, etc., etc. You know, there was a whole host of learning on all sides, but I absolutely appreciate that, you know, there was a frustration with the amount of time for delivery. I'm glad to say the last ones, I think we're down to single digits now, will be delivered by December. So that will be the end of it. But on the real positive, there are over 450 schemes that have been delivered across Leicestershire that would not have been delivered because this was stuff that wouldn't come out of core budgets. We would never have provided. So there has been hopefully a lasting legacy for the communities. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, Grant. And that's good information. Any comments? Les?
Thank you, Chair. So personally, I think the scheme was a brilliant initiative. And something I very much valued as a county representative, and I know my parishes were very grateful, particularly mine was about speeding and safety. Yes, clearly frustrations, but actually you got it in the end, and the projects were delivered, and I do know one of mine is one of the very last in the process, so thank you for that. The only question I've really got, Anne, is knocking on the door, 60% of all the interventions were speed, safety related. So is there anything we as a authority can take away from that and bring into future policy? You know, as a county councillor, it's not irregular that I'm contacting the officers through CSC about a safety issue or a speeding issue or. And because of regulations, because of policies, because all the justifiable reasons I can read and understand as to why, no, you can't have that, Les. So is there anything that we can learn from that knocking on doors? 60% was about speeding and safety, and take it away and say, well, you know, as we develop our policies moving forward, these are things that we could stitch in. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Anne.
A real challenging one, an interesting one, and I think you and your 54 colleagues are similar in the fact that, you know, I'm sure speeding, you know, those safety things that are prevalent in your post bags, absolutely, and we as a department fully understand that. I've been very clear with the teams that the only time we say no is either if it's legally not allowed and not safe on the highway, or we can't afford it. So what it comes down to is our level of resource. In an ideal world, we'd do all these things anyway, and you wouldn't need a members highway fund. But where we are with budgets is they're so small, we have to have a criteria to prioritise. Therefore, you need to have a speeding issue, you know, on the data, not just perceive, because many communities perceive there to be a safe speeding issue, but when you actually look at the data, it's all within the speed limits. Or there isn't an accident issue. Now, none of us want to operate in the fact that you've got to have certain accidents in order to, but the harsh reality is we don't have enough money to go around to meet the requirements of all our communities, and no community is different. Every community's got some kind of safety concern around Leicestershire. I'd be challenged to find one that didn't. So therefore we have to work off the criteria, because we've got to prioritise, we spend our limited resources. But we absolutely know, and I think it's fair to say whenever I've been in discussion with Cabinet and with lead member, etc., they absolutely understand how important highways, transport, particularly safety type initiatives are to the communities. So, I mean, I think my perspective would be whenever there is some extra money, I think highways and transport really do well from benefiting from that, because members get how important it is to our communities.
Thank you. Mrs. Gank.
Yeah, thank you. I think the thing that was most valuable is as councillors, we can see our inboxes, we see what the queries are. I did exactly the same. I just looked at the accident data and thought actually what things could do the best for my community. I think there's a couple of things that, you know, from learning on our side, we really want to know who those 6 councillors were that do put in the 25%, don't we? But I suppose the thing is that as councillors, so for example, I asked for a drop curb that was to take cycles off the highway on my slip road on, you know, it's sort of in Braunston, although it's probably closer to Louise's patch. I've got no signage. I've got the drop curb, but I haven't got signage. And it feels that I didn't know I needed to ask for that. I asked for cycling improvements and the drop curb's gone in and the box has gone in on the road, but people don't know it's there. There's no sign. So it's, I suppose the thing is we don't know what we don't know is probably the question. I think the other thing is that I know we went through lots of teething problems, but sort of the experience as me as a county councillor, I was asked to do a load of work, which I then did, consulted with my residents, only to be told that's illegal on the highway. Why did you ask me to consult on it then? So I think there's probably learning on both sides as councillors in terms of what we ask for, but also on the other side. And just to say thank you, you know, the kinds of things that were removed from my list actually just went in as business as usual, you know, lining, painting, reworks, and actually be the ability to just put them as a bundle has meant as colleagues from highways, you've been able to look at that and go, I can include that in my lining programme. Well, we maybe didn't know that. So maybe there is some learning on that we could maybe pull together. But, you know, overall, it's great to see these little projects. I know they were giant for you in their totality, but for us, our communities really valued them. And, you know, I have to say, part of what I want to do is improve the access into Braunston. and I cannot tell you how upset I was when the re-graffiti was done. We'd made that decision that as a community we wanted to have graffiti removal as part of that because of the way it looks and feels for our community. And I genuinely my heart sank, and I know the community's heart sank when the graffiti just returned. And I know that is sad, but I think, you know, the lift that gave to the community to get rid of it, to only for some nice person to think that their design was something the community they wanted to share with the community. You know, I think that's the frustration. That's just the, you know, my side. But thank you for all the work that was done.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutt. Anything you'd like to add to that, Anne?
No, I very much take on board that bit about you don't know what you don't know. And I think that was part of the thinking behind the shopping list, to try and give a bit more idea, but absolutely get that, you know, there's probably a lot more we could do and that kind of thing. I think it was, well, one, we're all learning, but two, the resourcing challenge as well. You know, that really was, we were caught on that one. But yeah, you know, I think if we did it again, we'd be in a much better place. And I think, you know, that level of conversation, that interaction, that providing advice first and having those upfront conversations, that's where the real value is, to then streamline the rest of the thing and not have lots of applications that don't go anywhere, etc., etc. So yeah, I absolutely take that point and agree that, you know, that could have been much better. And if we did it again, I think that's where we would focus a lot more resource, because it stops some of the work, unnecessary work, much further down the line, and some of the frustrations that you would have felt. So that's it.
Thank you. Ozzy, like to wind up?
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, speeding is a problem across the county. I mean, personally, I work closely with the partnership, especially with the police and the camera van, and I utilise them quite a bit in my area, and it does cut down the speeding, because speeding really is a police matter. But, you know, we could get all these things put right, and the sign that you want, if you come back to us, your government, and give us our Network North funding. Oh, I think it was.
Can I remind you, Mr. O'Shea, that Amanda's here as a county councillor, not as an MP. Okay. Date of the next meeting is 16th of January 25 at 2 p.m. Any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent? As I stated at the start of the meeting, there are no urgent items. So, thank you for attending this afternoon's meeting. Thank you for your inputs. Thank you to the officers, and I wish you all a safe journey home. And a Merry Christmas.